Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I probably enjoy Age of Ultron more than most MCU fans because I bought it on Blu-ray back in the day, and before, the Avengers Infinity War movies came out, it was one of the few MCU movies that I had, so I would watch it kind of, over and over again. And so I actually really enjoy Age of Ultron. Now with so many of the MCU projects out, I don't really get time to do a whole lot of rewatch of the movies anymore, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this Marvel MCU retrospective, is so that I can go back and rewatch some of those older movies that I haven't seen in years. So before we get started, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button if you like this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Marvel reviews. And if you want to help support and grow the channel, be sure to check the link in the description below. You can buy me a coffee. Alright, so now let's get into my review of Avengers Age of Ultron. Alright, so this is probably going to be a little bit of a long review because I think there's kind of a lot of stuff to talk about with this movie. Some really good stuff and some of the stuff that's not so great. But the movie opens up with the Avengers fighting at Baron Strucker's Hydra base, a place called Sokovia. So we kind of have learned that the Avengers, ever since the ending of Captain America Winter Soldier, the Avengers have kind of been going around taking out Hydra bases all over the world, kind of like what Cap did in Captain America the First Avenger. And they're looking for Loki's scepter, which was in the first Avengers film. So this is a pretty cool action scene. It's a really good way to kind of just open up and show the Avengers working together. It's a really cool opening scene. I do like Cap and Thor using the shield and hammer together to weaponize it. That's a pretty fun callback to the first Avengers film. And the whole joke about Cap and language throughout the film is kind of a nice running gag, so I do like that. We also meet the twins, Pietro and Wanda Maximoff, who we saw at the end credits of Captain America the Winter Soldier. Here they start off kind of as villains, first working for Strucker and then for Ultron. And Cap gets a good line when he says, "What kind of monster would let a German scientist experiment on them to save their country?" Which I kind of like. It's kind of talking about both him and the twins. And I think it's kind of meant to show that sometimes people in desperate situations will do desperate things with the best intentions, but that things aren't as black and white as we tend to think that they are. So the twins volunteered to help protect their country, just like Cap volunteered to protect his country. So it's a good line. I really like it. So Wanda gives Tony a vision that could be kind of referencing the events of Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. So Tony grabs the scepter and decides he needs to build a suit of armor around the world. So we get some cool scenes in this movie with Tony and Bruce, which is always fun. They're being science bros. And I like seeing the Bruce being a scientist nerd side a lot more. I think that is a good aspect to lean into the character on. Gives him a little something more to do. And so I really like that. And then, of course, the vision is what motivates Tony to want to create Ultron. In this movie, we get a little subplot between Bruce and Natasha flirting and trying to start up a romance. And I actually kind of like it. They did lay some groundwork in the first Avengers movie, if you kind of go back and watch their scenes together. So it makes a little bit of sense. And at the time this movie came out, I remember there was kind of a little bit of a backlash. A lot of people got upset with the scene where Natasha says, she can't have kids, and then she calls herself a monster. And I think people were conflating the two as what she was talking about. I can kind of understand the confusion, the way the dialogue was written, but she wasn't calling herself a monster because of the fact that she can't have kids. You have to listen to the whole story she was talking about. She was saying that the Red Room turned her into a killing machine as somebody to not care about things like having kids and a life and people. They don't value people the same way. And I think in a way she sort of blames herself for letting it happen to her. And so I think that's why she was referring to herself as a monster. And I think it kind of goes back to what she said in the first Avengers film, where she has red in her ledger, she wants to wipe it out. And I think we kind of see with the events of Captain America the Winter Soldier, SHIELD, having Hydra, she is sort of doesn't see a clear path anymore to clearing out that red in her ledger. And she still considers herself a little bit of that monster that they made her. So it's actually a pretty good character beat for Nat, and I think we do kind of continue to see her grow a little bit, but I really did like her in this movie, and I thought her and Banner were pretty cute together. I also want to mention the party scene at the beginning of the film where the Avengers are all sitting around talking, and they're trying to see who can lift Thor's hammer. Thought that was a really fun scene. And Cap kind of makes it budge a little bit, which makes sense because he's Captain America. And it's just a really great scene. I really like anytime we get the Avengers interacting with each other without, a threat level or action or danger or anything like that. But then, of course, we do immediately jump into an action scene because we get Ultron. And one thing I'll say about this movie is I do think that they rushed Ultron a bit. We get a brief explanation of what Tony wants the Ultron program to be, and then they put the Mind Stone in like a Legionnaire robot suit, and then boom, we get Ultron, and that's it. So it kind of feels like there should have been an extra scene or so to set up Ultron, set up what went wrong with Ultron. Why did he, with all of that, what went wrong there? Is it the Mind Stone that maybe took Ultron to be crazy? I don't know. So I do kind of think that we should have had a slower build up to the reveal of Ultron. I mean, I don't mind Ultron as a villain. I think he's kind of okay. Like, James Spader does a great job with the voice. But I just don't think his philosophy works really well or is even explained properly, which is sort of a great comparison when we get the Vision at the end of the film. So I do think they could have just reworked Ultron a little bit better in this movie. And then we meet Ulysses Klaue, and we're introduced to the idea of the country of Wakanda, and we learn that that's where vibranium comes from. While I do kind of like that fight scene that we get in Africa, it does feel like a sidetrack mission just to get Bruce to Hulk out and, injure civilians to take him to that place where he doesn't, he needs to go away. So I really don't like how they all figure this out. They pull out old record files from Hydra. I don't know. Why would Hydra have files on Klaue, for one? And then Tony just happens to see a picture of Klaue. And then Thor just happens to point out this Wakanda branding on Klaue's neck. And then they mention, oh, it's actually from Wakanda. And then they just say, oh, well, yes, vibranium comes from Wakanda. And if they knew vibranium came from Wakanda and they know how valuable a resource is, why do they assume Wakanda's a third world country in the other movies? So this all just kind of doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's a whole lot of happenstance just to get us to that one scene. It's very clunky. I do think that we could have written it a little bit better. And so then we get Hulk smashing up the city, and Iron Man comes in with the Hulkbuster armor, which is pretty cool. And it's a pretty fun scene. We get Hulk versus Iron Man. And earlier in the movie, Natasha can sometimes calm Hulk down with a lullaby. She says the sun's getting real low or something. But right now she can't do that. So Tony calls in Veronica, which is something that Tony and Bruce sort of designed together to trap and capture the Hulk. And even that doesn't work very well. But it is a really cool scene seeing the Hulkbuster armor take on the Hulk, which is a lot of fun. And then the big part of this movie is the reveal of Hawkeye and his family on the farm. So we go to their family farm. And, this movie's trying to make Hawkeye the sort of heart of the Avengers, which I think in theory could work really well. But I think in this it just kind of falls a little flat. Because other than Natasha and Cap, Hawkeye doesn't really interact with the other Avengers, Thor, Bruce, or Hulk very much. So I believe Hawkeye is the heart for Nat, which is something we saw in the first Avengers movie. But they didn't really do that here. Clint does have a good talk with Wanda at the end of the movie to kind of motivate her and encourage her to help fight. But we don't get enough of that throughout this film, and certainly not in the last movie. We didn't get any of that either because it was brainwashed most of it. So I wish they would have maybe just had a couple more scenes with Hawkeye and the Avengers one-on-one to really kind of build us that, yeah, he's the glue that keeps this whole team together. And that's what they literally try to say in this movie, but I just don't think it really works. And then another thing that feels kind of out of place is Thor's dream bath. So, we the audience, we learn a little bit about the Infinity Stones from Thor the Dark World and Guardians of the Galaxy. The need to cram this vision about the Infinity Stones is super not necessary. In his vision, Heimdall says that he causes the destruction of Asgard or something, which is, I think, kind of leading to Thor Ragnarok. But that movie has nothing to do with the Infinity Stones either. So I'm not really sure what we're doing with this insertion of the Infinity Stones, other than the Avengers know about them, but they don't do anything about the Infinity Stones until it's too late in Avengers Infinity War. So I'm not really sure why we're inserting this. Again, we the audience already learned a little bit about the Infinity Stones from some of the other movies. We don't really need this. It doesn't give us any new information about the Infinity Stones. I think it kind of is there just to set up that post-end credit scene with Thanos grabbing the gauntlet, saying, "I'll do it myself." But other than that, it's completely unnecessary side story. And it takes Thor out for a good chunk of the movie, and he's not even in the fight scene that we get in Korea. So I don't really like this whole side story with Thor. And I do like the action scene that we do get in Korea. And then the twins decide that Ultron is crazy. And so they kind of switch sides and to help team up with the Avengers. And, some of the Avengers are not super happy about that. And there's a great line that I like from Bruce to Wanda, where Bruce says, "I could choke the life out of you and never change a shade." I really like that because he's so pissed off at her for triggering the Hulk and inadvertently causing damage to that city and to the people, and makes him look bad. And this is really the Bruce Hulk dynamic that I really enjoy and like, is that sort of dichotomy. And the fact that he's because in the last movie he says, I'm always angry, right? But he doesn't always turn into the Hulk. And so in this movie, he's kind of saying the same thing, like, I could be really angry and choke you, but I won't turn into the Hulk. Which just shows that little hint of darkness that he has in him, which I do think is kind of like a mirror reflection of him in the Hulk. And so I do like this version of Bruce, and then going forward, I kind of like his character less and less. But this is still a really good version of Bruce, and I really love that line. And then we get the creation of Vision, which is a cool character played by Paul Bettany, who did the voice of Jarvis. And then they brought him in to do the physical character of Vision, which is really cool. And I like the philosophical nature of Vision. He's always kind of like spouting philosophy and stuff. And he has a good conversation with Ultron at the end. And then, of course, he can lift Thor's hammer, so therefore he's worthy, and he can keep the Mind Stone. And so I really like this creation of Vision. I think it works really well. I think Paul Bettany's really great in the role, especially going forward. So overall, this movie has a few missteps. It's not as tightly written as that first Avengers movie. A few things are crammed in here to set things up in the future that really don't need to be set up. And just a few, and the Ultron as a villain doesn't work quite as well as Loki the villain did. But I do think that there's a lot of good moments in here to enjoy. I think I enjoy more moments in this movie than I do in the first Avengers movie. I also love when Cap just rips that log in half in front of Tony. That's a great scene. Cap and Tony and their sort of opposite views, which we'll set up another movie. But that's a scene that I think really worked for this movie. And I just love the imagery of Cap ripping that log open because I love Cap. And other than Thor, I think we do get to know each of the Avenger characters a little bit more. I love Wanda Maximoff. She's my second favorite MCU character, so it's great having her introduced here. I think a lot of the action scenes are a lot of fun, especially that opening one. I even like the ending action scenes. I think are pretty cool too. And then, of course, with Nick Fury at the end there, bringing in the helicarrier was super cool. And so I think there's just a lot of really good in this movie that people tend to kind of overlook because of some of those bad choices that were made. But again, this is a fun watch. I always have fun with it. Again, I've seen this probably more than any of the Avengers films. And yeah, I always have a good time with it. So that's my long review of Avengers Age of Ultron. I really like it despite some of its flaws. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you really not like it because of some of those flaws? Or are you like me, you've seen it many times? Let me know what you guys think. And until next time, hey big guy, sun's getting real low. Bye.